Good morning and welcome to the Real Logic Show. I'm your host Charlie, and here we deep dive into all things movies, from the biggest of blockbusters to the hidden gems, figuring out what works, what doesn't, and why. So grab your coffee and let's talk movies. Have you ever wondered what vengeance, Viking rage, and stunning visuals looks like all rolled into one? Well, that's the Northman. Today, we're breaking down this brutal epic and diving deep. Set in 10th century Iceland, the Northman follows Prince Amleth, played by Alexander Skarsgård, on a relentless quest to avenge his father's murder. It's a story of revenge, destiny, and the cost of honor, raw and unflinching. One thing that's worth noting about this film is its cultural impact within literature. So the Northman is actually based off of William Shakespeare's Hamlet, but what's funny about that is Hamlet is also based off of the Nordic mythology of the story of Amleth. So in a way, both of them mirror each other. Alexander Skarsgård as Amleth is absolutely magnetic, intense, brooding, and perfect for this role. Nicole Kidman shines as Queen Gudrun, giving a performance that's icy yet deeply emotional. And then you have Anya Taylor-Joy, which brings fire and nuance as Olga, making every scene she's in a highlight. The supporting cast rounds out a world that feels so brutal and so real. Visually, this film is a masterpiece. The landscapes of Iceland are breathtaking, and the cinematography just makes every frame feel like a painting. The fight scenes are just so brutal, chaotic, and perfectly choreographed. Every swing of a sword, every clash of shields just feels so visceral. I want to briefly touch on the director for a moment. I knew when I was watching this film that something seemed very familiar to me. The directing style, the camera angles, this is all due to the wonderful work of Robert Eggers. Most people know him for The Witch, which came out in 2016. Most recently, he did Nosferatu, and just a while back, he did The Lighthouse, also starring Willem Dafoe. Robert Eggers is on his way to becoming one of the best directors in modern times. The pacing of this film is very deliberate. It really lets the story breathe without dragging on too much. The revenge arc is very compelling and keeps you on the edge of your seat. There's also a quiet, meditative side to this film, which really gives you time to feel the weight that Amleth takes on this journey. The dialogue may be sparse in this film, but when it hits, it's very impactful. There were a few accurate depictions of real Viking rituals throughout this film that just kept me captivated the entire time. But we can't really touch on those scenes without mentioning just how important the score and soundtrack was to this movie and to these pivotal scenes. The score to this film perfectly captivates every single scene. From the tense moments to full-on battle sequences, sound design makes the world just feel so alive. Sword swinging, the wind howling, and horses galloping just feel so real and so immersive. What really blew me away in this film has to be the opening sequence of this movie. It was just so intense and raw, very unforgettable. I really loved how the movie doesn't really seem to shy away from the harsh realities of the world at the time. I'd say my biggest critique of the film, though, seems to be in the center of the film. The pacing, although not necessarily bad, just seems to drag at some points, but the payoff at the end of the film is so worth the wait. For the next segment of the video, I want to get into some spoilers of the film to really dissect what the theme and the message that this movie was really trying to portray. So I'm going to put a spoiler warning at the top of the screen, so if you haven't seen this movie yet and you're planning to, go ahead and skip forward until the end of that spoiler comes off the screen. There's a quote in this movie that perfectly sums it up. "The strongest forgive. The oak tree does not care when the boar rubs itself against it." This is a movie about vengeance and getting back at the ones that hurt you. We follow Amleth, and we view him as the protagonist of this story, but when we really dissect his character and his actions and the consequences that follow, we realize he isn't a good man to be idling. There are a few movies that have this kind of structure where you're following a character that isn't necessarily the good guy. Now, I'm not saying his uncle was a better man, by no means, but it just shows you what costs we must take in order to act in spite and vengeance rather than just forgiving. Towards the end of the movie, it's revealed that he is bearing 2 children with his soon-to-be wife, and it just shows you that he chose to go back and to kill his uncle rather than becoming the father that he was destined to be and becoming a king with his sons taking up that royalty after him. It's a very dark, tragic story, to be honest with you. He isn't someone to look up to and to romanticize. He was a tragic, lonely man at the end of the day who lost everything instead of just forgiving. And as I was just describing that, it's kind of funny that I just noticed the resemblance that this movie also had to The Lion King, where you had Mufasa being the king, the boy's father, and Scar being the uncle, and it's all about the actions the cub must take in order to fulfill his destiny at the end of the day. Before we get into the final verdict of this film, we have to really touch on the ending of this movie. You have the uncle going down the line, one by one, massacring the slaves, because he doesn't know exactly who is infiltrating the murdering of his men. Right when he gets to Olga, you hear Amleth at the top of the hill scream down that he's the one he wants. That really stems the whole rest of the movie. So then you get to the point where Amleth he finds his mother, and he thinks that his mother has been taken by his uncle, but you really come to find out that the mother was glad that the uncle had murdered the father. So then you have this whole scene between him and his mom. He ends up killing her, and then his half-brother comes out to protect his mom, and he's stabbing Amleth in the back, and to get him off, he swings his sword, and he ends up killing his half-brother too. And that's really when it hits you that this is not a good character, and there is a line of going too far. That then brings us into the final scene, the gates of hell, the final showdown between Amleth and the uncle, which, I mean, the visuals, it really reminded me of like Obi-Wan versus Anakin on Mustafar. You have like this lava essence to it, the swords clashing, the little bit of dialogue you get, but the best is when Amleth is on the ground, about to be defeated, and he lets out this primitive, primal roar that was the last oomph he needed in order to truly kill his uncle and become victorious. But I use the word victorious lightly because as he's laying on the ground after just murdering his uncle, he's dying as well due to the wounds throughout the battle, and he's starting to see his life flash before his eyes. He sees Olga and his two children, and he knows that they're going to be okay and they'll be safe. But you also realize that he lost everything, and what was it for? And I think that is one of the best endings to a movie that I have ever seen. Overall, The Northman is a visually stunning, brutally honest tale of vengeance, amazing performances, epic visuals, and a story that really sticks with you. I give this movie a 9 out of 10, and for me, that is up with some of the best. Definitely a must-watch for those of historical epics. And lastly, I just want to give a quick shout out to Captain Long Dong Dizzle for the movie review. What did you think of The Northman? Drop your comments below. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more movie reviews and scoops. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.